Hello to everybody. It's a very long presentation, so I will go through it very, very quickly. The most important presentation is the one which follows after. So this is just for your information. So first of all, I want to talk about the problem which myself and my team are tackling now. And the problem is very simple. It is that the world we know is becoming digital. More and more of the world is actually described in digit. Every business process, every personal process, every process we have in any other area of life is conducted in bits and bytes. And digital is very fragile. It's very easy to copy. It's very easy to destroy. You don't need a lot of energy to destroy it. You don't need a lot of energy to copy it. And as such, it needs to be protected in order for this digital world to be at least as resilient as our world of species or our world of physical world. We need to protect it. And that faces three major challenges. So one challenge is complexity. So the digital world is multiplying itself very rapidly. Today we have about 5 billion smart devices connected to network globally, which require protection. Over the next 10 years, we're going to grow this number to 500 billion. That's a crazy number. If you think about number of IT people needed to support one smart system, today you will not be able to grow number of IT people by a factor of 100, even in case IT people will start multiplying themselves very, very quickly. And that's not happening. And the more importantly, these devices are currently placed in maybe, say, I don't know, 10,000, 100,000 locations. So most of the smart devices are in large companies, in large offices of large companies or large data centers. But as we move forward, that is actually changing to tens of millions, hundreds of millions, and billions of locations. So because everything around us is becoming an IT location. So that is very complex. Then with that, we get much more value in the systems, applications, and data. We also get many more of them, and we get more users. And so the security is becoming sort of a reality of life. So without security, like without immune system, the digital world cannot survive. Security is industrializing itself. There is high-frequency security attacks. The amazing thing about this particular slide is that these things I can update for every presentation. So every presentation I make, even though I would make it every week or every day, I can have new things. US Coast Guard, January, cyber attack, January, DHS, also January. And when I say January, today is actually 22nd, but because I already said it once, I feel like it's already not January or February, but it is still January, and there is more attacks which happen. And these attacks are just something which happens at all times. And then the final problem is cost. With so many devices, if you pay per device, or if you pay per user, or if you pay per gigabyte, with so many devices, so many gigabytes, and so many users, the cost of running IT infrastructure is becoming the major part of your budget. And that is especially true when you deal with such a secondary problem of protection, because the reality is that people don't really want to be protected. They want to have nothing happen to them, but they don't really want to spend money on protecting themselves. That we can see even in the current physical life, we should spend much more effort on being healthy, but we don't. And so with our company, that's the first problem we're doing as a company. The next part of my speech is about the university. We introduce a new product category. It's quite brave to introduce new product category. We are fighting to explain to people that it's new. Cyber protection, which is integration between safety, nothing gets lost. Accessibility, nothing is not accessible. Privacy, you can always know who accesses what. Authenticity, you can always be sure that your application systems and data are not modified. And security in one package to make it very efficient, very easy to use, very reliable, keep control in the hands of the user, and offer full security. Amazing thing about this product category, it's needed by everyone, and because of that, we are A medium-sized company with 1.5 thousand people, only $250 million in run rate revenues, but we are accelerating our growth. So we grew 30% last year, we're growing 50% this year. And we are relatively global. We were founded in Singapore. I'm Singaporean, despite my Russian name and Russian accent. And we are headquartered in Schaffhausen. We always say we have dual headquarters. That's how we position ourselves. We need to have dual headquarters in two such amazingly stable, neutral, friendly, and confident countries to make sure that even in case one country doesn't function, the other one does. And we are used by almost everybody. That's Acronis, right? And Acronis is based on a lot of engineering. We have 300 patents. We filed 60 patents last year. We are filing close to 100 patents this year. That's a really large number because, in many cases, say 30 times larger companies file about the same number of patents. And so we specifically use deep learning and machine learning to build cyber protection and cyber platform, which is core of our value proposition to make everybody cyber fit, right? And yeah, as Bertrand said, we recently were able to get this unicorn status. I'm not sure why it's important, because we're an Asian company and I'm an Asian person. We actually don't have unicorn, we have uni-dragon. So it's a cyber dragon with a single corn. So it's our own cyber dragon with a single corn, right? Now the second part of the talk. So we, by now, as scientists know that universe is very roughly can be thought of as a computer. There's a bunch of books about it. I recommend to read this book, very metaphysical book by David Deutsch. Anybody read the book by David Deutsch? Okay, I recommend that you read it. He has two books. This one is probably more interesting, but they are both complementary. Then one is very mathematical book by Scott Aaronson, who was giving lectures on ETH just recently. And part of my content is from these lectures. When he wrote this book, I spoke to him at about the same time and told him, like, it would be nice if somebody would write the books. It will be very easy for anybody to read about quantum technology. And he said, I'm writing just a book. And I said, like, but is it going to be easy for like non-scientists to read? And he's like, yeah, it's completely, totally super simple. And then I start reading the book. It's full of formulas and mathematical tasks. So it's okay. I have a physics and computer science education for me to read, but for example, for my wife to read would be difficult. And there's another book by an unpopular guy who was recently put on suspense by MIT, Seth Lloyd. Funny story, but the book is nevertheless good. They did not suspend the book yet. That didn't go quite as far to suspend the book. So the book is still good. It's called Programming the Universe. And I recommend to actually look at these lectures. This is 3 lectures by Scott Aaronson about sort of limits of computing, which he just had, was it October? I think it was October in ETH or something like that. And so what does it mean that the world is a computer? It means that you can potentially use a computer to predict the world. And that's quite useful. For example, you predict such things like weather, and we use computers to predict just about everything around us. We make planes with computers, cars with computers, we make everything with computers. We make actually apparently a political model with computers, and so we can have such wonderful achievements of computer age like Arab Spring or Brexit. And so what is a computer? This is a very basic picture of what computer is traditionally. Digital computers are all can be represented by Turing machine, and the traditional current computer has very simple architecture, which is roughly can be called for Neumann architecture. You have input device, CPU, memory, and output device, right? And that's sort of a very simple description of a modern computer. There is typically one or small number of CPUs, and there is sort of one or small number of memory devices, and there is input and output. And so these computers benefited from this observation, which is coined to be called Moore's law, that a number of transistors and resistors on a chip doubles every 24 months. And due to that wonderful observation by Gordon Moore, who was the founder of Intel, we had this wonderful situation where we were accelerating and accelerating and accelerating. And since about 10 years, you would read about the fact that supposedly Moore's law is dead. And so there is this whole organization which is actually focused on ITRS, which is now saying that by 2021, transistor will stop shrinking. And before that, they made actually such predictions for earlier date. But the fact of the matter, there are physical limits, Bremen limit and Margolis-Levitin bound, which would approximately give us another 75 or 60 years for accelerating digital computers the way we know them. And Scott Aaronson himself, in his speech, which I reference, think it's about 25 years. So why is that such a problem to actually scale the computers? Pretty straightforward. There is this three problems. One of them is performance and through output per sort of square centimeter or per unit of power. Second is just amount of power needed. We have limited amount of power. Nevertheless, we can exploit a lot of the power which is around us. We have limited amount of power. You can easily run out of it. And then also we have limited amount of space. So if we build a computer which is larger than the Earth size, that will be too big, right? Probably. It will not fit. And so there is always tricks to screw the Moore's law. So one of them is Turing machine is 1D. Current CPUs are 2Ds. New CPUs are coming out as 3D CPUs. And so as such, you can make more in a square centimeter. But the good thing is that to support my prediction, I don't think you will make 4D CPUs. So 3D is a maximum. And so with that, we are faced with a number of problems which we can never solve on digital computers as we know them today. These are some relatively obscure problems. So one of them is Diophantine set equations cannot be computed on digital computer. Sounds a little bit theoretical. Actually, it's an important problem in mathematics. But then maybe less theoretical problem of finding minimal not connected set inside minimal independent set problem in a graph, which is important problem for networking and for logistics. So effectively, you have a big graph and you find all the dots, maximum not connected set in a graph. And you find all the dots which are not connected. It's important. For example, one of the places where you need to resolve this problem today is in setting up 5G networks. So 5G networks will have a lot of cells, and where to put the cells, it's important. But it still sounds obscure. Apparently, there are two problems which are completely simple to understand. One of them is factorization, which is a main way how we rely on encryption. So factorizing large numbers is much harder than multiplying them. And because of that, we can rely on modern encryption, on RSA type encryption and the variants. And another problem, which is even more common in physics and engineering, is many-body problems. So we have all the equations by quantum mechanics on predicting the behavior of matter, but apparently resolving this equation for a large number of bodies is impossible in digital computers. You get to, say, 50 spins, and it becomes almost impossible on modern computers without approximations, and you get to a larger system. And in order to estimate some system, you need to be able to estimate, say, a system which is sufficiently larger, let's say, I don't know, 1 million spins, so 100 by 100 by 100, or maybe more. And so such systems are impossible to calculate. So even though we know all the laws which would allow us to predict how the matter behave, we cannot actually make a better steel or make a high temperature superconductor or make a better cover for, say, coating for our devices, which say self-healing with that. And so is there problems to resolve? And we know there is all these problems which are amazingly annoyingly present in the modern life, which look like the problems which should be resolved with science, and specifically could be much assisted by beta computers. So first problem is disease and aging. So I'm reading a lot. I'm getting older, so I've started losing my vision a little bit, so I have to wear glasses, and my brain is not working the same, and so I started reading books about getting older. and about how the bodies function. And so the bodies of humans and the brains of humans are the most complex machinery which we have in the world. And so we can't really predict how they operate, and as a result, we're all sick with aging. So all of us in this room are sick. We're gonna die, and we're gonna die relatively soon. We potentially can live 3 times longer if we have the right computers and the right applications which can help us to make better medicines and to understand how our bodies function. Especially annoying is that we will start to be more stupid with age, which is, that is sort of a difficult part of getting older, and in the last stage of your life, at some point your brain stops being functioning quite as good. And we know even less, and we can model even less about the brain. Environment and global warming, clearly a problem. I always give this example that if you're looking for a black cat in a dark room, it is very hard to find it if you're especially not sure it's there. But if you are sure it's there, you will be actually amazingly more effective in finding it. The problem with all this environment, global warming, because we don't really have a very good model of the environment and global warming, it becomes an ethical and metaphysical discussions, like is it good to kill animals or is it not good to kill animals? Do we need a lot of species on Earth or do we not need a lot of species on Earth? Is it a problem that the Earth is warming up or it's not a problem? Well, you can make a model, you can just show that all of us are dead if something happens, and with a very high probabilities, and people will think, oh, okay, that looks like a problem, we will have to really deal with it. Then, other problems. Social justice, major reason for wars and violence, right? So people go and kill each other in major volumes. So we're all sick with disease, and we're all sick with being aging. Not only we're sick this way, but for some reason, every year there is probably several million people. I mean, I would think at least 3 million, maybe in some years 10 million, which are killed due to violence. And then, of course, space and universe challenges if your mankind wants to live longer. So for all of it, we need better computers. So again, what is a computer? Very roughly, compute, storage, and networking. This is an example of a computer, right? It's a mechanical computer which was built in 1912, which is used to predict tide. And it was used till 1965, right? So that's a mechanical computer. It's still a computer. It still has compute, storage, and networking. So what is a modern computers? So modern computers today, CPU, GPU, TPU, not so much difference. All of this is digital. This is some parameters. TPU, I don't have much time, so I'm not going to stop on it too much, but TPU, which is tensor processing unit, is much better for machine learning. CPU is general purpose, GPU is sort of better for machine learning and for some other specialized tasks. All of them are kind of merging into one place. And so then we have next generation computing. The promising things are to resolve the problem of deep learning and machine learning, which takes very long time to train. Why does it take very long time to train? You would read something about AlphaZero, and they say that AlphaZero was able to learn how to play chess better than anybody in the world within just 4 hours. So 4 hours, not so much time. Well, really, it is 4 hours after about a couple of years of them actually trying to teach it. So they tried 1 time, 2nd time, 3rd time, it didn't learn anything, and then eventually they tuned the model to the extent that it learned. And so if you can do these iterations not in 4 hours, but in, say, 0.4 seconds, that would be much better. And so you have a Lohi chip, which is shipping. You have Cerebras, which is supposedly shipping. That's a startup in Silicon Valley. And so what they make is a 1.2 trillion transistors per chip. So the CPU is 332 billion, and GPU is 21 billion, right? And so they make a super large chip. It's very hard to make this chip work. So from what I understand, as a company, we're trying to get the chip from them, and we're not very successful because from what I understand, chip doesn't work very well because there's so many transistors. And then there is this promising design by the guy called Stanley Williams, who was working for HP. He's now working in the University of Texas, and he has a neuromorphic design based on memory stars, which is a very promising design to make computers with distributed network storage and memory, and with some degree of resemblance towards the human brain. Then you have photonic computers. Up until recently, it was believed that photonic computers are dead end, but since recently, due to achievements in metamaterials and nanophotonics, you have number of those startups which can make 100 times, so 2 orders of magnitude better computers in terms of power efficiency or in terms of frequency, which is very important for specifically deep learning type tasks, because you need to do a lot of relatively simple optimization tasks. So this is a 3 examples. So Light Intelligence is a startup with a design which is supposedly better than anything available from silicon, electron computers, luminous computing, IR labs, still digital computers, and quantum computers. Again, up until recently, I started looking at this field 12 years ago. It was perceived to be something which is not going to ever happen. And I remember talking to my friends in 2009 when I just started sort of spending some money on this. They were telling me, okay, quantum computers, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, maybe 50 years, maybe never. Maybe never. And they keep repeating, maybe never. This is science. But it is different now. So we have all these groups, Google, IBM, Rigetti, superconducting systems, ion traps, IonQ, and Honeywell, and cold atoms. This is my classmate, Misha Lukin. Personally, I think he has most promising design from the standpoint of scalability, not shipping yet. Photonic-based quantum computers and topological quantum computers, which are promoted by Microsoft, which are theoretically most promising and most scalable if they ever make it work, which at the moment they couldn't, right? And so the amazing thing about this year, the previous year, is that there was the first year when we had a publication about quantum supremacy. So when Scott Aaronson was giving his speech, I don't think he mentioned this just yet. He alluded to it, but it's relatively simple what they actually did. So if you think about quantum computer in a very simple terms, it kind of resembles old-time mainframe. So old-time mainframe, my mother is a physicist, my father is also a physicist, so it's quite unfortunate for me, but never mind. So they would take this bunch of cards and they will type them, some program into them, and they will carry this into the mainframe. They will give it to the operator. Operator will put it in the mainframe according to certain schedule, and so within 1 day or couple of days, depending on how loaded was that mainframe. It was a Soviet mainframe. I was born in Soviet Union. They will give back the bunch of cards, which my parents will then translate back into the results, right? And so this mainframe will be able to execute certain amount of steps, not too many steps. So the modern quantum computers are kind of similar. They can execute certain number of quantum operations. So let's say 100 or 200. And I don't remember how many was the Sycamore processor able to execute. But the point is that it was able to execute as many operations which is impossible to simulate on a quantum computer. So if you make a random set of operations, so imagine some crazy monkey, just make a set of random logical operations and make them quantum logical operations, then if you try to simulate the similar quantum operations on a classical computer will be too slow. So it will be here, right, in this area, in the red area. And that's what they were able to do. It's not particularly very useful. It just shows that it is very likely that the quantum computer is sufficiently better for this kind of weird experiment. Since then, there was a couple more articles which promise better achievements. IonQ, which is a company where I'm also investor. I'm investor in 2 quantum computing companies. Personally, they claim that they're going to have 100 to 200 qubit supremacy by the end of this year, and they're going to have 2,000 to 4,000 qubit operations, which will be useful for something sufficiently better than just proving quantum supremacy. Because effectively, the Google experiment is just about the fact that we have calculated something much faster on an existing quantum computer that you can do on a classical computer. Yeah, please. Yeah. No, they all work. I mean, no, I didn't say if they work. I said that these guys, I personally don't like topological quantum computers. It's a personal dislike.
Is it that they do the calculation on the next slide, decide that this
No, so these are all very different designs. So superconducting qubits are very easy to manufacture. There is many people who can make such such sort of devices. Then the ion traps are at the moment scaling to the maximum number of coherent and working qubits today, but it's hard to see if you can scale it well beyond 200. The Misha's design, Rydberg atoms, can potentially scale in 3D. Now they're scaling it in 2D, so it can potentially scale to about 1 million qubits and more. But it is not so easy to program. It's not so clear how to program yet, so they have different programs. I'm not so familiar what these guys are doing with photonic computers, I have to tell you honestly. I can look at them. Microsoft design uses sort of physics to help to make these computers coherent and work. And if they actually make several topological qubits and they're able to program them, then they can theoretically scale to very, very large number of qubits. But practically, they don't even have a, properly a single qubit. Okay, so this is working. So you can do something on this. This is working. This is working. I'm not so familiar with two of this. These are just different designs, right? And so in any case, so if you go more into fantasy world, so you can have an analog-free computer. This is Scott Aaronson, but much younger. He looks older now. He's actually also going to Davos, so he's coming. I'm going to talk to him on Friday. But he here demonstrated an analog computer which can estimate minimal surface on the wireframe much better than any analog computer. You can easily construct such analog computer much better than, which will be better than any existing digital computer. Then you can sort of fantasize about the relativistic computer. Then, of course, that's why I say, oh, could this term be finally useful? There is a black hole computer. So black hole computer can theoretically calculate things in 10 in the power of 35, very, very fast. 10 in the power of 35 is very fast. And so when I actually gave the speech, somebody told me that now they know this explanation about why we could not observe any alien civilizations. And so the explanation is very simple. So they all built accelerators like in CERN. At some point they realized that the fastest computer is a black hole, and they produce a black hole, and then they get sucked into the black hole, and that's it. So they don't exist, right? Because a black hole could be arbitrarily very small. So you can actually make extremely small black hole, which nevertheless will be able to successfully consume all of us and surrounding solar system very quickly. Then Claytronics computers and advanced materials computers. Actually, advanced materials computers is not something amazing, especially for storage. You have DNA storage. Just today I read an article about the Chinese who were able to make extremely power efficient and speed efficient machine for extracting square roots with DNA. So they actually use DNA to extract square roots from very large numbers extremely fast. So basically, it's kind of an analog computer. But if you think about our body as a computer, it constantly calculates various things. And for that purpose, our body is better than a digital computer. We can't model it. Then we have human brain computing. And I'm sorry, this B is misplaced there, but computing B. Anyway, so 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion connections. Each connection actually is a smart connection, 10 watts of power, massively parallel. Superior learning capacity. And this is sort of the quote from another crazy guy from the field, Roger Penrose. Anybody read about Roger Penrose? And have you read his books? Right. So he argues that the digital computer and even quantum computer is inferior to human brain because human brain can come up with something like a proof of Gödel theorem. I'm not quite sure I buy into that argument, but I would personally set the three questions. This is my personal sort of questions. First of all, do we for sure know all the physics which is currently used by our brain to do information processing? Up until recently, a few years ago, we thought it's chemical and electric reactions. Now we know there are some photonic reactions in the brain. Is the brain a quantum computer? Not clear. I mean, is there any quantum effects required for the brain? Not clear. Not clear. Is there a free choice, by the way? Not clear either. Anyways, coming back, second question, is, do we even know all physics needed to understand human brain? Physicists are amazingly ignorant people. So I have actually PhD in computer science, master in physics, and so I can call physicists ignorant. My parents are physicists, and so I can call them ignorant as well. But if you are not physicists, you are not allowed to do that. And so they think that it's not necessary to understand how human brain works in order to understand how universe works. And for me personally, it's kind of a funny thing, right? So why is that the device which is designed to understand the universe, we don't need to understand the universe? This is kind of interesting. And so that's another question. Does physics even change around very powerful knowledge device? I make this very ridiculous statement that you can imagine that the God could be extremely rude and extremely stupid. Because the God knows all the answers to all the questions, and he knows which questions do not require answers. And so whenever you ask a question which the God thinks you don't have to answer, he just doesn't answer, which is very rude. And then whenever he actually asks him very hard question, the God will answer, but he doesn't have to answer very quickly. He just knows the answer. So there could be arbitrarily long time for a simple question which is important. There are some important questions which are very simple, like 1 + 1, how much is that? And the God will think, maybe for a week, but then he will answer correctly. And then could be extremely complex questions which we don't know the answer, but he does. And so is actually the physics changing? And so we don't know how the human brain operates. That's amazing. In my opinion, it's very much ridiculous because in my body, most important part of my body and your body, I hope, is the brain, and we don't know how it works. And so these are places where you need quantum computers very soon. No, sorry, new generation computers very soon. For example, in networking, there is already photonics computers which are employed because networking is approaching maximum speed today. Networks are very inefficient. You take electron, it's converted to photons, and photon converted back to electron. As a result, you have longer delays than is necessary for long communication. You have limitations on bandwidth. Internet is actually very slow today. And even 5G, don't believe people when they say 5G is a solution for everything. They're already talking about 6G, and it's still going to be very slow. And so this is the ultimate fantasy machine of the future: CPU, GPU, TPU, memory star arrays, photonics, quantum computers, micro black holes, noise-free analog computers, advanced materials, human power combined into something which can solve all problems. And to make these computers, you need multiple things which are not being actively created in a concerted matter. So one of them, you need new materials. This is just examples of new materials which were needed. Some examples, very small number of materials which were needed to create modern computers. So cheap-grade monocrystalline silicon does not exist in nature. These lithium-ion batteries do not exist in nature. One Nobel Prize for that. Optical fibers do not exist in nature. There is no Nobel Prize there. Very strong magnets for modern hard disks, which are amazingly complex mechanical electronic devices, and GMR Hertz, another Nobel Prize. So this is new materials needed. Then you need new hardware. So new hardware, this is IonQ computer. This is how it looks. Practically, this is the one which I think by the end of the year will be the most well-performing quantum computer. It's called IonQ Cube. This is System 1, System 2, System 3, System 4, System 5, System 6. They will all look the same, just this particular chip will be maybe slightly different. So the chip is produced by Sandia Labs. But as you can see, this chip is a very small portion of this device here. All over this, you have some different optical mirrors, you have different server engines, you have a lot of hardware to move it around, to program it, so a lot of hardware. Then you need to have new software to design it. So the progress of Moore's law is partially enabled by the fact that when somebody is designing new CPU with 32 billion, I wanted to say trillion, 32 billion transistors, he doesn't really sort of design it on piece of paper. It's impossible to design it on piece of paper, right? Imagine 32 billion logical gates, but there is a lot of software for it. And so the software is getting better and better and better, and uses CPUs which are getting better and better and better. As a result, you can make better and better CPUs to make better and better software, to design better and better CPUs. With all these new computers, you need completely new software to design them. Then you need new operating systems. The most successful companies of today are all operating system companies. Actually, we know 3 companies which are currently over $1 trillion. They all have their own operating systems, Google, Apple, and Microsoft. There is another company which is also over $1 trillion, which is called Aramco. They don't need any operating systems because they have oil. So either you have a lot of oil or you need an operating system. You can choose. And then, of course, you need new applications and new algorithms because all these computers, they are amazing, but they need to be programmed to do something useful. And because of that, we bravely enough decided, besides creating a new product category, to build a new university in Schaffhausen, which is focused on computers, business, and physics. It will sustain itself by generating sustainable revenues in real estate, education, science as a service, spin-offs, learning, and science management. This is the goals of the university. So $500 million in revenue in 15 years. So it's a small university. This university is probably in 15 years is $2 billion. So it's 4 times smaller in terms of revenue than this university in 15 years. And ETH is 3.5 billion. So probably in 15 years is over 5 billion. So it's 10 times smaller than ETH. 2,000 to 3,000 students on campus and 20 to 30,000 students which are off campus and blended, and a lot of people which we will try to educate through various executive programs, research centers with 25 chairs, different directions of research, and a technology park for startups, all in Schaffhausen. How many of you from Schaffhausen? Amazing. How many of you have been to Schaffhausen? How many of you want to move to Schaffhausen? Well, after we build the university, all of you would want to move to Schaffhausen, right? And so the way we want to build it in Schaffhausen main campus and several other campuses for blended students. We start with the main campus here. So more than 50%, probably 70% of all science will be in Schaffhausen. And then we're going to have a campus probably in Bulgaria, campus probably in Malta or Italy, and other places. Why do we need all those campuses? Because we believe for blended students, it's important that it's close to them so they don't need to fly too far. So if you fly to campus and back 6 times a year, if the flight takes you 3 days altogether, and 2 days altogether in transit, back and forth, and it costs you $2,000, that is too much of investment. But if it's $200 and it's 2 hours, then it's okay. This is a direction, very specific directions today. We intend to stay trendy, so in 15 years, the directions will hopefully be better because the world will progress. Cybersecurity, information integrity, artificial intelligence, machine learning, software engineering, robotics and autonomous machines, quantum technology, advanced materials, and applying this to business things like digital health, new generation business management, digital sports, digital learning, and education, and all arts and design. The importance in the way we want to progress it, we believe we make new generation software and computers, new generation hardware and materials, and we teach our scientists and business people to apply to real world problems. So just an example of one area, autonomous cars. We have started from making our own racing team in autonomous car racing, which is called RoboRace. And this is just one example where you have so many things need to be applied at the same time: cybersecurity, information integrity, AI and machine learning, software engineering, robotics, of course, quantum technology because of sensors, advanced materials, lots of advanced materials and sensors, new generation business management, completely different business models with autonomous cars, all digital law required because a lot of questions on how do you deal with problems in autonomous cars, digital sports, all in art design. So this is Schaffhausen. If you haven't been, this is how it looks. Well, not today, right? But this is Rheinfalls, and this is, who knows what it is? What is this watch? What's the brand of this watch? It's from Schaffhausen. Yeah, it's Moser, right? So this is 3 companies from Schaffhausen. Moser is actually a very famous brand in the past, perhaps famous brand in the future. IWC, George Fisher. This is some information about Schaffhausen. I don't want to talk about it too much, but it's very close to Zurich Airport. I was giving a speech in New York recently. Swiss people are amazing people. As a Singaporean who was born in Soviet Union, it never amazes me to learn new cultures. And one thing I've learned about the university is that all Swiss people from different cantons, they think the other canton is very, very far. So I was talking to a McKinsey audience, and there was a Swiss guy who is from Zurich, and I'm giving this speech to people in the audience. There's $5 trillion of market cap. There are semiconductor industry board members and CEOs, and I'm telling them, Schaffhausen is very nice, it's 30 minutes from Zurich airport. And the guy said, no, it's 1 hour. I said, no, I live in Schaffhausen. I drive, it's 27 to 30 minutes. He said, no, it's at least 1 hour. I live in Zurich, it's at least 1 hour from Zurich airport. And so in a way, people actually think Schaffhausen is very far. Believe me, it's very close. So it's 30 to 45 minutes from here and a 30 minutes train. And we're going to be close to train station. Right, this is our board, Nobel Prize winner in physics, in graphene, 44 years old. This is our chairman of the board. Nicolas is one of the well-known physicists out of Switzerland, probably one of the most cited living physicists from Switzerland today, quantum communication. Arthur Eckert is one of the, I think, collaborators. Did he write any articles with you, Arthur? Yeah, so one of the people who put a start to quantum cryptography. Michel Lukin, my classmate, and the guy who's building one of the best quantum computers, he's a Harvard professor. Mark Kamlet is a former provost of Carnegie Mellon, and we built a university in cooperation with Carnegie Mellon and National University of Singapore, which are all both not super wealthy, but very highly ranked schools, and which are rapidly evolving, even though they are not new. This is our team. I'm not going to stop on our team too much. I don't have much time, right? You're already standing here. He's going to kill me right now. I can see that, but you can see he's there, right? And so this is the people we collaborate with. Wolfgang is another Nobel Prize winner. David Gross is another Nobel Prize winner. Sir Andre Geim is collaborator of Kostya in graphene and advanced materials. Peter Zoller, Rainer Blatt, Ignacio Cirac. Eugene is people very well known in the quantum technology field. Eugene Demler is, I guess, condensed matter physicist and also quantum technology. Vlad Shalaev and Anastasia Beloussova are experts in metamaterials and nanophotonics, which is, I think, very important development in the future. A lot of the computers will move from electron computers to photons. Photons are sufficiently more power efficient. And then David Sanders is our business expert. And with that, I want to invite you to use Acronis cyber protection, right? That's amazing, you really need it. I want to invite you to join Kostya. He is in Singapore building new advanced materials, which are smart materials. Smart materials are living materials which can react to environment in dynamic fashion, not stupid materials like what we use today, which just if you break them, they stay broken. Join Gilles, right? On your research. Join us as a researcher, faculty, sponsor, or buy our services. Join our events. We definitely hope that Kostya will get his second Nobel Prize, and Gilles will get at least 1 or 2 prizes, whichever the prizes will be suitable. What do you prefer, Nobel Prize or Turing Medal?
Why choose? Why choose?
That's a hard choice.
It's a hard choice, okay.
Why not both?
Why not both, okay. And so then, in addition to that, we are definitely looking for master students. So today we have 10. We are going to have about 25 additional students by the end of the year. And so this is the programs we have. Carnegie, one program, SIT, Program Software Technology for Digital Society, which is a program which will be partially taught on campus, most likely, here in Schaffhausen. And you will be able to go for some of your studies to either NUS or Carnegie Mellon. So this is the programs. There is more information on the website. That ends my very long speech. Sorry.